Committee meeting of Thursday the 4th of July. Tracy, can you take us through the SEDERUNT and apologies, please?
Thank you, Chairman. We have 12 members present, and I have apologies from Councillors Blake, Councillor Drybrough, Councillor Fairbairn and Councillor Maitland.
Thank you. Can I remind members that this meeting will be recorded and that the recording made available for public listening at a later date. Pauline, did you want to add? Apologies from Councillor Hislop, thank you. Members, are there any declarations of interest? Okay. Can we agree the minute of the previous meeting, which is agenda item 4? Thank you. Tracy, can you take us through the procedure for today, please?
Thank you, Chairman. The Planning Applications Committee will consider each application in turn as detailed on the agenda. The case officer or other appointed officer will make a short presentation addressing the determining issues accompanied by digital images. Any late information, amendments or corrections will be reported at this time. Members may ask questions of officers following the presentation on points of clarification. The Chairman has been provided with a list of eligible representatives who have registered to speak at this meeting within the period specified in Council policy. No other persons will be allowed to speak. The Chairman will individually invite those who have registered in advance to speak to make their presentation, after which they may be questioned by committee members. No questions may be asked of members. The order of eligible parties being heard will be as follows: third parties objecting to an application, third parties supporting an application, statutory consultees objecting to an application, elected members of Dumfries and Galloway Council who are not members of the Planning Applications Committee, and such members should withdraw from the committee chamber after making their presentation, applicants or their agents. Representatives have been placed in alphabetical order, and a copy of the public speaking list is available from the committee officer taking notes of our proceedings. Presentations will be strictly limited to 3 minutes per person, except for national and major developments, which by their very nature are more complex, and the time limit will be 5 minutes. The Chairman of the committee will ask you to come to a conclusion if you take too long. Representatives are encouraged to use the time allocated to clarify any points they consider material and address the determining issues. Certain matters are not normally material planning considerations and will not be taken into account by the Council when deciding on a planning application. Representatives should not raise any new matters without explaining why they were not raised earlier with the case officer. Please do not repeat what is in the report, as members will have already read the report. After all the representations have been heard, the meeting is then in formal session and no members of the public may address the committee from the public gallery. The Planning Applications Committee will then proceed to determine the application or, where appropriate, agree a recommendation to be made to full Council, who will determine the application.
Thanks, Tracy. David has a bit of good news or information he'd like to share with us. David?
Thank you, Chair. Just to let members know that yesterday, late afternoon, we had the presentation for the Design Awards, which the Council has run, and the display boards for all the submissions are presently in Committee Room 2. So I would urge members to go along and have a look at some of the examples of very good design and architecture which have been submitted. Councillor Drybrough gave the awards out yesterday afternoon, and there will be coverage in some of the local media, and hopefully to let you see the winners and also just show the award in their context. Thanks.
Thanks, David. I'm sure members would all want David to convey our congratulations to the staff involved. Thank you. We come to agenda item number 4, an application for the erection of 25 dwelling houses, including formation of new access roads, parking, open space, landscaping and suds drainage system at former hospital site, Phase 4, LOCHMABEN. The application type is full application. The reference number is 18/1669/full. The recommendation is approved subject to conditions. and the case officer is Andrew Robinson. Andrew, just take us through your presentation when you're ready, please.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Yes, the application site is situated on the western side of Lochmaben, with an area situated just behind. This is the hospital here. This is the A709 main road into Lochmaben. So the site is effectively, there's two parts to it. There's an area to the rear of the hospital, and there's an area to the right hand side as you come into the site, which is grassland and a woodland. And the application site is effectively within what is an ongoing residential development that's been constructed over the last 15 years or so. And what's proposed is 25 houses, with 20 in this area and 5 in this area. So I'll just go through a little more zoomed in view of them. So plots 1 to 8 and 20. So you've got a road proposed here and detached dwelling houses fronting a road. And going a bit further around, so you've got public open space with the road here, and all of the houses facing the road. Again, just a little bit further on. And this is the area as you approach into the site. This is where the 5 houses are proposed here, public open space and a new suds pond. And there's a footpath proposed to link to the A709. This is the proposed street layout, so it's slightly different from what has been built on that estate. It's a shared surface now, in accordance with designing streets, with an integrated sort of street and open space area, with on-street parking as well. And this is the area where the 5 houses are proposed. Due to a change to the National Roads Development Guide that came out in March, this is actually proposed to be a private road, as it serves 5 or less houses, so it no longer requires to be an adopted road. In terms of the landscaping, this is the area of open space within the development, so grassed area, some public realm features, and a proposed toddlers play area. And the area just here is proposed to be effectively grass and the footpath linking to the A709 and then into Lochmaben. In terms of the drainage arrangements, there's I'll show pictures of this in a little while. There's effectively a suds. At the minute, the development is served by a suds basin and a suds pond, which then discharges via pipe to the rear of the houses on Woodlands Drive. This is a new proposed suds basin to accommodate the 5 houses just here, and then that discharges into the Kirk Lock, which goes under the A709, which is existing arrangement at present. And these are the details of the proposed suds. It's just showing a turf embankment, and that's the layout. And that's the cross section through that proposed new suds pond basin. Sorry, I've referred in the report to tree felling, so I've included these plans for reference, really, which shows proposed tree felling within the site. So this is the area to the rear of the hospital. All the red trees shows trees proposed to be felled, and this is the area where the 5 houses are proposed, which effectively is proposing 250 trees to be felled. This shows the street elevations. This is the area to the rear of the hospital where there's 20 houses. It's effectively detached bungalows finished in brick, which is matching what's been built previously in the rest of the development. And this is the area to contain the 5 houses. So there'll be 2 semi-detached dwelling houses, 1 detached, 2-storey, finished with a combination of render and brick. These 3 cross sections are showing through the site. This is the area to the rear of the hospital. So you've got an existing house here and proposed plot 17, the road, and plot 12. So this is from north to south. That just gives you an idea of the land levels, proposed land levels in that area. This is the area from the Woodlands Drive. So this is actually looking towards where the new 5 houses are proposed. So you've got plot 1, that's existing. Land levels are sloped down to where plot 23 is proposed. and this is the road and public open space. So that just shows you the land levels there, and then this cross section is in the southwestern corner of the site between proposed plot 10, and this is an existing property, West Lodge. Just gives you a bit of an idea of the proposed site levels. Okay, so moving on to the photographs. This is effectively the approach into the site. So you've got the A709 just here. This is the car park for the hospital, and this area here is where the proposed 5 houses are proposed. So that's the trees that are proposed to be felled to make way for that part of the development. That's the car park serving the hospital, and then this is the area where plot 21 is proposed. So this shows the extent of the land level drop as present. That's the boundary looking at number 1 Woodlands Drive. So this is where the rear of the proposed 5 houses would be. Just gives you an idea of the extent of the land level drop. And that's taken, again, that's number 1 Woodlands Drive. That's looking where you would see the 5 rear houses. There's like a woodlands walk at the back of the properties on Woodlands Drive, and this shows a photograph of that. This is the area where the proposed SUDS is going to be. So you've got Southfield cottages here, and the A709 is just here, and a footpath would be linking to the main road. That's showing it within the context of Bill's house. This is the rear of Southfield cottages, and that's actually looking as if you're coming into the development from the A709. Okay, moving to the rest of the site. This is showing the entrance to the rear of the hospital. That's looking west into the site. It's roughly where the new road would be. So that's looking where plot 15 would be, looking to the rear of where existing houses are. Area of proposed plot 16 and 17. Again, proposed plots 18 and 19. This is the building that's proposed to be demolished, formerly part of the hospital. I believe it was previously accommodation for the hospital, and that's proposed to make way for plot 12. This is where plots 10 and 11 are, and this shows you where the existing property, this is West Lodge in the background. This is looking towards plot 9. To the rear here is a country road, which is an adopted road that serves some farms to the north of the development site. And this is starting to pan around looking northwest. And that's looking back. And this is looking to where's the northwestern corner of the development. So you get plots 1 to 6, and you can see some of the existing development that's been recently built. Looking south towards plots 8 and 11, this is where the area of open space is proposed. And this is where plots 1 to 4. So you see that there's a road that's being built that's serving existing properties at the moment. And this is the country road that I referred to before. I just thought I'd include this. This is the existing SUDS area that serves the development in the minute. So this is the SUDS basin. This is looking over it. So this is in the northeastern corner behind the properties at the minute. So this would accommodate some of the 20 houses that are proposed. This is where the drainage would discharge to. So that's the SUDS basin. And there's a SUDS pond as well. So after assessing the application, officers consider that the development is acceptable subject to the conditions stated, and it's recommended for approval subject to those conditions.
Thank you, Andrew. Any questions for the case officer? Andy? And then Lee.
Thanks, Chair. Just a couple, Andy, if I could. The 250 sitkas, what was the purpose? Were they screening or were they planted for commercial? That's the first thing, do we know? And the second thing is the SUDS basin you're showing me there, is that what feeds into the burn that runs down towards the loch? And if you look at the bottom of the brae when you come in, the first house on the left-hand side, it runs down beside that.
Andrew?
In respect to the first question, I can't answer that. I don't know what the history is of those trees being planted, so I can't answer that question, because I don't know. In terms of the SUDS, so you say, is it discharging to it's discharge, it's going to connect into the existing pipe that discharge into the Kirk Loch. That's what the drainage impact assessment says. So it discharges into the surface water, discharges into the loch on the other side of the A709.
Andy?
Sorry, I could come back. So it's via pipe, Andrew, right, rather than into a burn, yeah?
Yeah, the plan shows, let's just go back to the plan. Yeah. So this is the surface water pipe, and then it would connect at this point into what is an existing pipe, and then it's under the A709.
How far is that SUDS from the burn? The reason I'm asking, of course, because there's some concerns, and I know I preempt things here about the flood danger in the 1 in 200. But the only bit I can actually see from here is that burn, it's a very small burn, albeit at some times, and other times it can be a raging torrent for personal experience. And I'm just wondering if the SUDS would have any bearing on that whatsoever, because that would be the flood risk I would be suggesting, but I'll bow to your greater knowledge.
I'm assuming the burn is in the adjoining field so the field, this is the boundary here, and the field is in here. I'd have to check the map to look at the distance. I'm happy to do that and check the map.
Thanks, Andrew. All right, David, you want to come in?
Maybe just to make the point that the SUD, the whole purpose behind it is attenuation. It actually slows down the water infiltration into existing burns. So arguably, if it's designed properly, it shouldn't have any effect even when the stream is in spade.
Thanks, David. That was exactly what I was getting at. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Andy. Leader?
Thanks, Chair. I've got a couple of questions. One is on the trees and paragraphs 4.35 to 4.39 go into some detail about the condition of the trees and whether or not there are bats in them and so on. There isn't actually any assessment of the carbon impact of taking down that number of trees. And given the motion passed last week by full council in terms of climate emergency, should we not be considering carbon impact of planning applications and maybe having mitigating, conditions to mitigate that? It's maybe a more general than just about this particular application, but it just sort of struck me that maybe that's something we should be taking into consideration when we're looking at planning.
Thanks for that, Leader. David?
Yes, I did listen to the full council's debate last week. It is something where arguably the idea of sustainable development is absolutely at the root of the local development plan anyway. But it is the sort of thing which we can maybe look to take forward as part of the supplementary guidance to local development plan 2. There's a hook in that in policy OP1F, I think it is, which says there will be supplementary guidance on that. In respect of this application, obviously we can't retrofit that. It isn't a current requirement of the local development plan, but the assessment of the healthiness of the trees is obviously part of that.
Thanks, Leader. Do you want to come back?
I had a more substantive or more specific question actually about this application, and it's with respect to 4.16 and education. I was slightly surprised to see that LOCHMABEN Primary is at 80%, because I had understood it had been higher than that, and it was because a general purpose room had been now being used as a classroom area. And I'm just a bit nervous about saying, that it's only at 80% now when a room which was designed for something else has now being used as a classroom. And the other bit is about, in terms of the Lockerbie Academy, in assessing that, did they take into consideration the planning application we recently passed with respect to a development by Cunningham Housing Association, which would also make a contribution or take effect make an effect on the capacity of Lockerbie Academy. Now, it isn't affecting it yet, but it will be affecting it in future. And do we look at that cumulatively at all?
When you reply to the leader's question, Andrew, maybe add in how recent that information is and whether or not we might need to look at it again if we're minded to approve it today.
The consultation, the most recent consultation response we had from Education was on the 20th of June. We reconsulted them after amended plans, and their consultation response, it doesn't elaborate whether they've looked at that, but they've shown the capacity of Lockerbie Academy to be 86%, and that's and as a result, they said contribution per dwelling house is nil, and that's a recent response that we've received from Education within the last couple of weeks.
But it's not taking into account future development, which has already been agreed, presumably.
I would hope it would, Leader, but David might be able to help. If no, we'd need to factor that in.
I can only assume that, seeing Education were fully aware of the former Lockerbie Academy site, that they have factored that in. Certainly I know there's been extensive meetings between the development plan team and Education in coming up with the latest, what's called likelihood table. So they will have factored in all the other developments that have either been granted permission or are identified in the existing and proposed local development plan.
Thanks, Leader. Jim McComb.
Thanks, Chair. What is the threshold figure at which an educational developer contribution becomes necessary?
Andrew?
It's now changed to 90% under the latest one. So we've had a look into this issue, and I believe the community councils particularly raised this question. They may come on to that in their presentation, but the local plans team who've been working with Education, the threshold has been changed. And I think there's probably a statement that answers your question. Within the email back to the community council, our local plans team said another change that's been incorporated as a result of the latest likelihood contribution table is the increase of the 80% trigger point to 90%, as this was considered more appropriate and is more common with other Scottish authorities, although some set this at 100%. And this is used as a tool to assist education services in assessing if a school requires refurbishment, extension, or new build subject to development pressure. So the school capacity of Lockerbie Academy at the minute is shown as 816. And if I just do a very quick calculation for you, just to see what that 90% figure would be, it would be 734. And the school roll at the minute is 698. So you're looking at a capacity at the minute for 36 school places, or 37 if you round it up.
Jim?
So our previous threshold was 80%. Yep, thank you.
John Young?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Andrew, for that. Could you go back to show the 21 houses that will access Woodside Drive through that gap between the two houses?
Is that the photograph or the plan?
The plan, thank you. And is there a plan showing how adjacent what you referred to as the countryside road is to these 21 houses?
The countryside road is just here, so it's not actually accessed from the development. It's separate. It's got a separate access from the A701. So the countryside road runs along the western boundary, along here, and this is where that access is to serve the 20 houses. And it would also connect onto what is effectively an existing road that's already been constructed. Yes. And adopted.
Just on the same point, Andy, can you go back to the slides where it shows that country road? Yeah, what's that on the right-hand side?
The access, Andrew.
Yes, that's actually taken at the top end of, that's taken in the northwestern corner. There's an emergency vehicle access that's been formed, although I believe my road colleagues require it as part of an RCC to remain blocked. Is that correct, Ken?
Thank you, Chair. It's to remain closed unless it is absolutely required by the emergency services.
Right, okay.
Thanks, Andy. David McKay.
Hi, thanks, Chair. Andrew, you were talking about a road past the group of 5 houses as being a private road. How does it fall into that category? And who, if it's maintained as a private road, who's liable for the maintenance of that road?
Andrew.
The threshold change, the National Road Development Guide has been out for quite a few years now, but this council, after a committee in March, agreed to, well, the council has agreed that they would now use the National Road Development Guide going forward as opposed to the council red book, which previously required any more than 2 houses to be served by an adoptable road. The new National Road Guide now requires that to be anything 5 or less. So it's a private road, it would then be, the developer would have to come to an arrangement in terms of maintaining that road as opposed to the council.
I take it, would there be some agreement made between the developer and the people who live in those houses? So
That'd be a civil matter anyway, Jock. If it's not a public road, we have no responsibility for it, and whatever happens to it would be between the property occupiers and or the developer. Andrew?
Yeah, that's correct, and it would be in this. It's proposed to be Lawburn Housing Association would have that housing, so it would be up to them to maintain that road.
Any other questions for the case officer? Pauline?
Thank you, Chair. Andrew, I note that the community themselves have been asking that, in principle, the suitability of additional housing provision in Lochmaben is questioned. Could you elaborate a bit on that, please? Are we talking about the design, the number of houses, the number of rooms, the availability for disabled people, older people, younger people? If you could just let us as councillors know, that would be most helpful. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Andrew?
In terms of the principle of residential development, we've covered that in sections, it's 4, no, it's at the beginning. It's section 4.5 to 4.7, and within the local development plan, it's not an allocated housing site, but there is provision for what we call infill or windfall sites. And effectively, if those houses are brownfield, there is a presumption in favour of supporting residential development. It's making up, these infill windfall sites are a way of making up the council's required housing targets, if you like, where allocated sites might not. But then that is subject to other considerations in the plan. So scale of housing, density, for example, that has to be considered. So in principle, residential development is generally acceptable, but it's not definitive. It has to be the scale of the development appropriate to its surroundings, and that is to be considered as part of the rest of the proposal.
Thanks, Pauline. You want to come back?
Thank you. So for clarification, the numbers of houses wouldn't change, but the actual layout of them, or what would it remain as is, as per this plan? This is what we're discussing today and deciding upon.
Yes, this is a detailed planning application,
Right,
so it's not a planning application in principle, it's a full application with all the details that we're assessing today.
Thanks, Pauline. Jeff?
It's just about the education capacity. I've still got concerns about it because the Lockerbie, the former Lockerbie Academy development, that was for 45 houses for Cunningham. Got another 25 going on here. That's another 70 houses we're talking about feeding into Lockerbie Academy. I think that's sure to take it over the threshold. At what point do you actually say, you know, you can't just have this planning creep effectively as long as none of these houses have been built, then it's going to remain below capacity. But once the first tranche are built, then you're above capacity. So there should be a developer contribution aspect to it.
It may be something you maybe want to consider as a condition if you ever get to the stage of considering approving it. But Andrew, can you help, Jeff?
I think it just goes back to what David said. We've got the response from education who haven't requested a contribution in this case, and we do rely on their figures to guide us on this, and that's what they've stated. Except the response doesn't elaborate on whether they've included Lockerbie Academy within that, but these are the figures that we have been given by education, who haven't requested a contribution for the academy, or there isn't a requirement for any of the academies. And I'm assuming when this was updated in March and April, it would have taken Lockerbie Academy proposal into account, that application, the former Lockerbie Academy site, I should say.
And we'll come back to that during the debate, I'm sure. Any other questions for the case officer? In that case, we come to our list of registered speakers for today. And given that this is a major application, each individual will be given 5 minutes. Be grateful if you wouldn't repeat what's already said. And I have a number of speakers listed. The first being Dr. Stuart Aitken. Dr. Aitken here, would you like to come forward, please? There is a little button on the right-hand side of the panel there. If you just press that, red light should come on. That will indicate the speaker's active. I will remind you with 30 seconds to go, just to bring your presentation to a conclusion. And if you'd be kind enough to wait in case members have questions for you, I'd be grateful. So whenever you're ready, sir, thank you.
Mr. Chair, I'd be grateful if you could bring up, Andrew, the photograph of West Lodge in relation to the Sitka tree removal. That would be helpful. Our house is directly next to the southwest corner of Woodlands development. We have 5 points to make. The one which shows the outline plan, where the West Lodge is prominent in the bottom right-hand corner. Drainage and sewage. We are concerned that drainage and sewage from our property will be affected by the development, as a connection from our house is located within proposed plots 10 and 11. Where topsoil has been piled high next to our hedge. The site manager seemed unaware of the manhole until we pointed out the problem. He assured us this would be raised with the subcontractor dealing with drainage, sewage and water, sewage plans and installation. The proposed plans don't address this. We are concerned that our waste will be cut off. We need reassurance this matter will be dealt with, and we would look forward to a site visit if this isn't understood. When Richard Perry met with us to discuss the original plans, he assured us on record that our drainage and sewage would be tied in. Second point, demolition of old hospital flats. Planning officer report gives reassurance about noise dust from the demolition. We are aware that asbestos removal from an adjacent building to the hospital requires specialist investigation, and we'd like reassurance on this. Contaminated land. The council's report into contaminated land points out there was seeping into the hedgerow corridor running along the west side, the public-private road, the small road U43A that's been identified, and onto Maxwell Bank Road's drainage ditch. The runoff and excess water was most apparent after tree felling, and both the land officer and the SEPA will want to ensure this is monitored. Tree felling. A large number of trees will be felled in the area adjoining West Lodge, plots 8, 9, 10, 11 and 12, as shown in your slide. The Council's own LDB 2 criteria on flora and fauna sustainability are not being met with replacement planting of trees felled. Since tree felling began in the site 10 to 15 years ago, there's been a substantial rise in water runoff, previously been absorbed by the extensive underground root systems. There's no drainage channel for water runoff on the north and west side, and loss of many mature trees will mean that there's more water runoff into Maxwell Bank Road with increased damage and erosion, and these are repaired at the council's expense. Tree felling has resulted in the loss of the red squirrel population, the only reason why none was found in the 2 recent red squirrel surveys. Point 5. The beach hedgerow corridor. The existing hedgerow is required to be maintained and where appropriate gaps filled in. Maxwell Bank Road has beach hedging extending on both sides for most of the extent of the road. It continues around into an up our own driveway, planting required by the Health Board when we purchased our property. It's essential that the mature hedgerow apparent in the site is not destroyed. There should be no encroachment on the part of the hedge that borders West Lodge, the site's southwest development plots 10 and 11. That hedgerow is a haven for birds and butterflies and other insects, and is the essence of the LDP2 intentions on preservation of flora and fauna. The proposed plot 10 replaces the previously stipulated strip of undeveloped land, and because of that we want to reassurance on the drainage and hedgerow retention. Several of the mature trees scheduled for felling have roots that are entangled with the mature beech and hawthorn perimeter hedge maintenance, and since the woodlands land was purchased, the developers have not undertaken any perimeter hedge cutting. Until the end of May this year, when they cut the hedge, the result was that many bird nests have been destroyed, and the action does not indicate appropriate management required.
You have 30 seconds to go.
Purchasers of any property adjacent to the perimeter hedge should be forbidden from removing the hedge or replanting within appropriate forms, and required to maintain an overall consistent hedge profile. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Do you have any questions for Dr. Aitken, members? In that case, sir, thank you for the presentation. If you'd like to resume your seat. Next speaker is Colin Davidson. If Colin would like to come forward, please. Again, Colin, you'll have 5 minutes, and I'll remind you with 30 seconds to go just to bring the presentation to a conclusion whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Well, firstly, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to express my concerns here at the meeting. I've been a resident in Lochmaben for nearly 45 years now, originally living in the middle of the town and since moving to Woodlands about 5 years ago. But during this time I've been involved with the community, including the Cub Scouts, Lochmaben Gala and the Castle Loch Community Trust. I've worked for 2 companies locally within Lochmaben and also 2 architectural practices in Dumfries. Over the years I've seen many changes in Lochmaben, some good and some less so, and that's why I'm here, as I believe the proposals don't offer a sustainable and sympathetic solution. And this is for the following reasons. Point 1, as stated by the planning officer, this development is not an allocated site in the local development plan. Despite this, I believe that it is important that the woodland site is completed in such a way for the benefit of the area, and so avoid the unacceptable and incremental development referred to in the planning officer's original report. Point 2, it's clear that the proposals are not being considered as a whole, as the application has comprised numerous changes since the original submission back in December. You will have seen that the planning requirements have been incorporated where possible, but in some cases a relaxation of recommendations and design criteria has been necessary. In my view, this has led to a disjointed submission with no consistency of approach, and that was the original point of the planning officer's original requirement for this application. Point 3. 5 of the 6 affordable homes have been sited on the southeast corner out with the original boundary shown on previous planning consents. This is referred to by the applicant as a buffer zone, a peculiar term I feel, as it's been referred to between the development and the Southfield cottages. This clearly goes against the LDP's preferred recommendations for a balanced community, which should incorporate affordable homes within a development's boundary. The LDP policy has actually been successfully implemented within other Lochmaben developments where affordable and private housing sit side by side. Point 4. There will be a serious impact on the landscape, habitat and wildlife if the development is extended outside the existing southeast boundary. This again goes against the LDP recommendation to build affordable housing on a brownfield site, which of course applies to the woodlands where it's located on the old hospital. Point 5. Whilst approval has been recommended, subject to further consents being obtained, experience shows that previous planning conditions have not been complied with, and in some instances, for example tree felling, which Dr. Aitken referred to, this has not been carried out in accordance with the LDP's reference to trees in relation to design,
demolition and construction. My final point, point 6, I believe there is a road safety issue relating to the junction of the cul-de-sac serving the proposed 5 affordable homes. Despite the road officer's report, this access does not comply with criteria required by designing streets, and the access comes out at a bend and where there's 3 other accesses. There are also safety issues regarding the junction of Woodlands Drive with the A709. Although this junction was originally amended to suit the development in 2006, the council has incorporated the A709 as part of their strategic timber route, which has led to an increase in the frequency and amount of heavy traffic passing through this junction. So to sum up, the relocation and integration of affordable homes will avoid overdevelopment within the site, which I firmly believe better reflects the needs of Lochmaben. Over recent years, a significant amount of affordable and private housing has been built, as recognised by members of the committee, and the LDP does highlight future plans. But this is despite a serious reduction in retail outlets, banking facilities and general amenities, as well as additional pressures on health provision within Lochmaben. I therefore ask the committee to consider today's objections and defer any decision regarding the application as it stands. This will enable a more integrated design for the development with no need for any compromise. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Colin. Any questions for the objector? In that case, thank you very much for your presentation. If you'd like to take your seat. We now have the next speaker, registered speaker, which is Raymond Albrook. Raymond, I will... You will have 5 minutes, Raymond, and I'll remind you 30 seconds to go just to bring the presentation to conclusion. Whenever you're ready, sir, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My objection is on one ground and one ground only, and that refers to the safety and in the community of Lochmaben relating to the access from this site onto the A709. It's clearly recognised there are traffic problems on that route, with the strategic timber route being increasing volumes of traffic every year. It is no longer safe to be on that route, and extra housing on the site will only exacerbate a problem. I would like to think that the measures can be taken to alleviate future risks. At the junction, we already have 2 sets of bus stops which are used by children at peak traffic flows. Something has to be done to make that easier for them. The heavy traffic volumes will only increase. There are poor sight lines from the side going on to the A709, so measures need to be taken to mitigate that risk. I've lived in Lochmaben near that site, 150 yards from the entrance for the last 40 years. Statistics clearly demonstrate that there are problems with traffic. But what the roads department have not taken on board are lots of the unreported incidents on that particular area. There have been many near misses, which I can account for, unreported. I've been twice knocked off a bicycle on that section of route without any serious injury, thankfully. Other people can repeat similar stories. It is a very dangerous section of road. We do have the strategic timber policy transport, which now is the length of the A709. There is resurfacing work proceeding on it this weekend and the following weekend. The LOCKERBIE section has been improved, but there seems to have been absence of any recognition that people should come first, and Lochmaben as a pinch point on that route seems to have been ignored. Now, while there's budget constraints in all departments, surely some of that money for that strategic timber route, government funded, should go into improving an infrastructure and better boundary, restricted speed limits on the boundaries of Lochmaben where this development accesses. A private member's bill recently fell in the Scottish Parliament, but they clearly put in place a directive that local authorities should now have that responsibility to take on board the measures of reducing speed limits in dangerous rural areas and in cities. I make a plea that you as a council should adopt these measures and be forward-looking to improve that structure. If it is not the wish of this committee to make a decision on better road maintenance at Lochmaben at that point, I would make a plea, Mr. Chairman, that at least the committee members who have not got strong associations and knowledge of the geography of the Lochmaben area, you should perhaps defer this meeting's decision until a further meeting is convened by the council, by the committee, to examine firsthand what difficulties lie on that particular area. I think you would be remiss in your duties if you allow a development like this to go ahead without addressing the roads issue. I fully support the extra housing. We've a brownfield site, which with the appropriate planning restrictions being put in place and all the measures being met, that affordable housing, first-time buyers, these housings should be good, and I think they should be good for Lochmaben. But without an access point which is safer for the community, I think you have to think very carefully. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much. Members, any questions for Mr. Albrook? John Martin.
I'm just wondering, why did he feel it not necessary to report these incidents you're talking about? Because if these had been reported, it would have been evidence for much what you're saying.
When you get knocked off your bike and you're not badly injured, you get flipped by a piece of wood off a wood lorry, you feel the police have got more important things to do with their work than have mind. Nobody was badly injured. We've had cars and lorries hit our boundary hedge in the last 12 months. When conditions were good, but they didn't justify a road incident in my judgment. If I had been thinking ahead that this might have an impact, bear in mind that that particular section of road is not particularly well policed by a speed detection vehicle, because there's nowhere you can set up a vehicle to catch traffic which kind of descends into Lochmaben on the 709. So there is very little policing of that section. No blame to the police in that respect. It's just very impractical.
Thanks for that, but as I say, if they hadn't been reported, even though they were minor, they built up the evidence.
Thank you. Yep.
Any other questions for the objector? In that case, Mr. Albrook, thanks very much for your presentation. The next registered speaker today is David McGilvray. David, again, you will have the same 5 minutes. I'll remind you with 30 seconds to go, just to draw your presentation to a conclusion whenever you're ready, sir.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for allowing me to come and speak to you this morning. Today I'm here to represent myself and also on behalf of all residents of Southfield Cottages. If you'd be so kind as to pull up the plan, please, that shows Southfield Cottages and the proposed felling sites. Thank you very much. Our main concern is that 200 plus trees are to be felled and extracted to allow 5 houses to be built in the area north of Southfield Cottages on a sloping gradient. This was amended from 8 in the first planning application. Access. The planned access to this part of the development of Woodlands Estate will be hazardous due to the close proximity of the private road to Southfield Cottages, the Lochmaben Hospital main car park, and the main access road to the front of the hospital. Access via the private road to Southfield Cottages will be denied, and in addition, the grassed area to the boundary of the trees from the edge of the road of Southfield Cottages is at present owned by the Health Board. Has any serious consideration been given to the noise and disruption that would be created to patients and staff of the hospital? If allowed to proceed, we can only hope that during felling and extraction of the trees in this area, that there will be minimum disruption to vehicle and pedestrian access to and from the properties and the hospital. In addition, we request, if approved, work not be carried out during unsocial hours or any weekend due to the close proximity of the hospital. We'd note with interest that notification of planning application was sent to the hospital, but not to the health board, not in any document seen on council site where all correspondence is shown thus far. Might that become a legal issue from the health board? Habitat. We have to dispute the submitted surveys carried out with regard to habitat in this area. There are bats in the wooded area, and the time to look for them is dusk and dawn, coming from or going to roosting. Not 2 hours after dawn on 3 consecutive days. It was hardly surprising none were seen at the time. There are squirrels in that location, as we have had them in our garden, even coming up to and looking into the conservatory. Numerous birds are in the near wooded area. As well as crows nesting, there are a pair of buzzards who nest every year. In addition, the following visit our garden on a regular basis, some of them daily: coloured doves, spotted woodpeckers, nuthatch. Of the finch family, bull, green, gold. Of the tit family, great, coal, blue and long-tailed. Redpoll, thrushes, blackbirds, sparrows, starlings, wrens, and in the summer, bramlings. Entry and exit. From woodlands to and from the 709 is challenging at times due to the volume of traffic and speed of approach from both directions, even although there is a mandatory 30-mile-an-hour speed limit, which unfortunately does not seem to be enforced. Consequently, with all the extra vehicles going in and out of the junction, the addition of an additional 25 properties planned will become more of an issue, and this is not accounting for any delivery vehicles to private houses, the hospital, and of course any visiting traffic. In the Head of Economy and Development report for this planning application, according to the Roads Officer, there have been no recorded accidents during the period 1st of January 2016 and 30th of April 2019, 100 metres either side of this junction. That, of course, does not mean that there have not been any. As you're aware, not all accidents have to be reported and recorded to the police as the law stands at present. It therefore concludes by assumption that because there have been no injuries or worse, fatalities recorded by the police, then any that have occurred is classed as insignificant and non-accountable.
You have 30 seconds to go.
Okay. In conclusion, we request that due diligence be given to the proposed application for the additional properties, and particularly the felling and removal of 200 trees to site 5 houses. It is interesting to note that no non-survey was carried out for 200 trees previously, and now the majority are deemed to unsafe and danger of being blown over and uprooted by the wind, and because there are a few up to 30 metres high, could be a danger to nearby properties. They didn't suddenly grow to a height of the last 5 years, and due to the prevailing wind directions, it's unlikely there was any uprooting they would fall towards Southfield cottages. If they did and caused any damage, I'm sure insurance companies would rectify the situation and sort out liability.
Can you just draw a presentation conclusion, please?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Mr. McIlvery? In that case, thank you for your presentation, sir.
Thank you.
Next registered speaker is Jenny Agnew. Jenny, if you'd like to come forward, please. Jenny, you will have 5 minutes as well. I'll remind you with 30 seconds to go, and just remain in case of questions. Thank you.
I'm speaking as an occupant of Bill's house, which lies directly below the site which is to be developed. We wish to make it clear we are not protesting against affordable housing. I think it's very necessary but we do have considerable reservations regarding this particular site. This photograph is quite useful, but I think there was another photograph which showed the lie of the land for the SUDs in relation to the cottage above and us. Well, yes, that's it. I'll come back to that. Woodlands, as it has been begun, is an attractive, spacious, and well-planned living area created by Richard Berry. The homes are laid out taking care with regard to the lie of the land and some of the mature trees which give a sense of permanence and an identity with nature as it has grown. The website of Richard Berry uses this comfortable and beautiful identity to help to sell its homes. There are trees and forested landscapes which depict the surroundings. However, this is but a comfortable image. Many trees have been cut down within the development itself, and now there is a proposal to cut down some 250 conifers to make way for affordable housing. This particular area is, in fact, outside the Woodlands estate. The trees are on a sloping piece of land at the entrance to the estate, and we understand that land would need to be terraced before it can be used for housing. Elsewhere on the estate, such sloping land which lies adjacent to this proposal has been incorporated into gardens. It's not been built upon. In fact, there is a marked contrast between the large bungalows with spacious landscape gardens and the affordable housing which is to be squeezed into a small area which is not really appropriate. It is to be there as an afterthought. Richard Berry is required to include such housing before he can extend his private housing. Why was this not planned at the start of the development? Why is it included as an afterthought in an area which is almost the antithesis of the estate as a whole? We understand that the land which lies adjacent to this planned development is part of the green space required in the development as a whole. There is an active green space within the development higher up, but this particular one is to be a passive green space. In fact, this area is anything but passive. We have immediately behind us, lying parallel with our hedge, a very large pipe which carries the dirty water from Woodlands. Now, you can't actually see it, I don't think, there, but that pipe sits very high on the ground. It's almost above the ground. So it's a very steep incline from the break in the hedge where we are up into that slightly more level area that you can see there. There are furthermore, as you can see, there are large poles in the ground, and then in that area directly where you are, you can see where the SUDs are going to be. So this field is anything but passive. It's being used for all kinds of utilities. So my question is, how is this soaking area to be managed? The path, I understand, is to go between the soakaway, which I think, and I might be corrected, looks as though it might be just in front of that telegraph pole. Anyway, the path is between the large pipe which sits high above us and the soakaway. So my question is this area to be landscaped into an attractive feature, or will it be neglected and attract unwanted litter?
You have 30 seconds to go, Jenny.
Right. The use of this land in this way has not been thought through. We were flooded in 2009. There was water which came down to us as a result of stripping the land of vegetation, which left the clay denuded and the water came down to us. This did not lead directly to our own problem, but we can comment on water which came out of the top of the manhole covers, a spring which emerged temporarily. This was a flood as a result of 3 very wet years, but it could happen again.
Can you draw your presentation to a conclusion, please?
Right. We question the management of the drainage area. We had water come down to us as a river very suddenly last year. It was as though a tap was turned on, it was turned off. 2 hours we had water in a pool at the back of the house. We don't know what caused that. And I would just like to say that is a big question for us. You've got it, that suds there alongside the cottages and no real indication of how it's, and who is going to manage it.
Thanks, Jenny. Can you wait just a minute in case anyone has a question for you, please? Do you have any questions for this lady, objector? Andy?
Good morning. Do you live in Bill's house, as it's called?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much for your presentation. If you'd like to resume your seat. The last objector is Tony Hancock on behalf of the Royal Borough of Lochmaben and District Community Council. Tony, you'll have the same 5 minutes. I'm going to remind you with 30 seconds to go just to draw your presentation to a conclusion. Again, if you'd wait just in case there are questions for you, it'd be great. Thank you whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Good morning. Tony Hancock, Vice Chair, Lochmaben Community Council. Lochmaben is a small rural borough and continued building and development is changing its nature, unique appeal and character, which is something we wish to retain. Earlier this year we saw the completion of a new development of 25 homes at Mill Road. This application for a further 25 homes, and despite being removed from the LDP2 plan, a public consultation recently took place to add between 16 to 48 further homes at Laverock Hall. So in a relatively short space of time, up to 100 homes, 200 extra cars, 300 people could be moving into a town whose infrastructure is diminishing rapidly due to the loss of the bank, petrol station, a hotel, 4 postal services, and one of its 2 convenience stores. The continuing housing development in the borough also is leading to increased problems with regard to traffic. A survey conducted by Dumfries and Galloway Council using traffic counters has revealed that during a 5-day working week, approximately 8,000 vehicles per day pass through Lochmaben, of which 50% are either commercial or HGVs. Following surveys carried out by the Dumfries and Galloway Council reveal that up to 3,000 vehicles per day are exceeding the 30-mile-an-hour speed limit, including 800 in the High Street. Parking in the High Street and the immediate surrounding roads is almost non-existent, and the recent decision of National Health Service to move 800 patients from Lockerbie to Lochmaben practice has further added to the already chaotic situation due to the extra patients parking at the east end of the High Street. We would therefore urge committee members to visit Lochmaben to assess them for themselves the traffic situation before any decision is taken regarding this planning application. We must also raise the issue relating to developer contributions. A letter from Robert Duncan, Dumfries and Galloway Council, on the 13th of March 2019 advised the applicant that the proposed development would be liable to developer contributions to the sum of £114,395.82. However, on the 31st of May 2019, the applicant was advised that the contribution no longer applied as a developer likelihood contributions table had been updated and therefore a contribution in respect of Lochmaben Nursery and Lochmaben Academy was no longer required. One reason was given that the Laverock Hall development had been removed from LDB2, but this does not prevent housing being developed on this site. It should also be pointed out that recently permission was granted to build 42 homes in Lockerbie, which will affect the Lockerbie Academy. Another reason was that the 80% trigger capacity point had been moved to 90% as it was considered appropriate, i.e. in common with other Scottish authorities. We would also inquire as to why developer contributions were not investigated for the following. Number 1, community facilities including health facilities. Lochmaben has recently had an additional 800 registrations to the local surgery as a result of locality health and social care arrangements. What calculations were used to determine the developer contributions for this? Number 2, waste management infrastructure. This application takes Woodlands estate above 50 units. Why was there no calculation taken into account for developer contributions? Particularly bearing in mind the Council's recent announcement to create a new waste service plan which is aimed at increasing the local recycling facilities. Number 3, off-site infrastructure relating to road junctions, public transport and impacts on the network. Lochmaben has a number of infrastructure pressure points as it serves as a point of connection from the rural to the B7020, which feeds the A709. Lochmaben is a small town on the A709 which links the provincial capital to the national motorway network. So any development, quarry, timber, agricultural, domestic, which relies upon access to anywhere, will have to impact on Lochmaben's junction and roads. Again, why was there no delegate contributions assessed, bearing in mind that each new house normally results in 2 cars and associated delivery vehicles? We would therefore ask that the issue of delegate contributions regarding this application is revisited before any decision is made. The Dumfries and Galloway Council recently announced a regional declaration of climate emergency. This planning application, if successful, will result in the cutting down of 200 trees and subsequent complete destruction of local habitat in order to build 5 affordable homes. How does this fit in with the new climate emergency plans? Finally, I would like to thank Andrew Robinson, Dumfries and Galloway Council, for his prompt response to answering queries relating to this planning application. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions for Tony, representing Lochmaben District Community Council? In that case, thank you very much for your presentation, Mr. Hancock. We now have the agent, Mark Buchanan. If you'd like to come forward, Mark, please. You will have the same 5-minute window of opportunity to address the committee. I'll remind you with 30 seconds to go. Just enjoy your presentation to conclusion, and if you'd wait in case there are any questions, again, I'd be grateful. Thank you. Whenever you're ready, sir.
Okay. Morning. Don't really want to say too much because I think the officer's report deals with most of the issues. Just want to pick up some of the comments and questions the objectors have raised. On West Lodge, the client fully intends to reconnect the drainage that's discovered when they actually discover where it is. It's underneath that pile of topsoil somewhere, so when that's stripped off and we can establish where the drainage run is, it will be reconnected to the new sewer. So just rest assured it's not going to be cut off. The public open space and the SUDS areas, they're subject to a condition that requires further detail. We can have the maintenance of that areas and the hedge, how that's going to be maintained, protected. So that'll be further detail coming on that. The low-cost housing. I take the point, it looks like it's squeezed in a corner, it's a bit of an afterthought, but it's really not. It's not been designed in previously because it wasn't a requirement previous phases, it's only just come in now. Auburn will be taking these on, and they are desperate to have them delivered as soon as they can. If this is a standalone phase that can be done off a private road and can be done as the first phase of the development, that will deliver them more quickly than if they've got to go through the whole RCC process, building a new road, integrating them in as they go. It's really just a means of delivering those low-cost houses sooner to Auburn. That's why they're there. Trees and ecology. They've been covered by the officer's report and the specialist report that we had done previously. Again, there are conditions for more detail to be carried out on those and some further survey work if necessary. One further point on West Lodge, the asbestos removal was mentioned. That will be subject to a building warrant application for that part of the work. It's, again, a future information I'll come forward on that. Other than that, I think the only other point I'd like to make is the flooding at Bill's house that was mentioned. Both of those incidents were out with the applicant's control. The 2009 incident was because of a collapsed culvert, which Andrew's report mentions that the council have fixed. There's been no issues with that since. And the one last year was due to land drainage failure, again, out with the applicant's control. So whatever we do in that area is not going to affect either of those from happening again. Other than that, I think that's all I want to say, unless there's any questions.
Thank you very much. Thank you for brevity. John Young.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Buchanan. Several of the objectors have expressed their concerns about the safety aspects of the junction between Woodlands Drive and A709. I mean, that junction will, if this development goes ahead, serve about 70 houses plus Lochmaben Hospital. Was there ever any consideration given to using, I think it's the U43A, the countryside road, on the other side of this development? Obviously, it would need to be widened, but was there any consideration ever given to using that road to access the A709?
Yes, and I think Ken Drew will back me up on this, that it just wasn't something that was going to be considered. There were suggestions even for pedestrian access to that, which were strongly discouraged.
Could you ask why?
I think Ken will need to answer that one.
We can get that in session, John.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Pauline?
Thank you, Chair. Currently in my ward, and obviously this is not my ward, but we have a severe shortage of disabled accessible housing. May I ask Mr. Buchanan if the design of the bungalows meet these requirements? Thank you.
Yes, they're all fully disabled accessible. Yep.
Any other questions for the agent? In that case, sir, thank you very much for the presentation. If you'd like to resume your seat. Members, we're in session. Can I just remind members that we can't rewrite council policy as far as roads goes. That belongs in another department. We have the application before us. If there is an intention to consider approving this, we can go to conditions about school capacity at that time. And Ken Drewett's here if anybody has other questions about the roads network. Having said that, we're in session, members. Are we inclined to go with the opposite? Elaine?
I remain a bit concerned about the schools, I have to say. Do you happen to have the figures on Lochmaben Primary and Nursery?
Yes, Lochmaben Primary School has a school roll. This is the right thing. So Lochmaben Primary School has a school roll 252 pupils with a capacity of 315, and that is shown at 80% capacity. Lochmaben Nursery is shown at 27 school roll and 35 capacity, so that's 77% capacity. And Lockerbie Academy is 698 school roll and school capacity as 816, which is an 86% capacity. Whilst some of the speech has been going on, I had a quick look at the Lockerbie Academy consultation, the former Lockerbie Academy consultation response, and also the consultation response from Education at the beginning of this application. And at the time, Education stated a school roll of 749. Now, this was reviewed in March, and I'm assuming that that means they've looked at future school numbers, and there's obviously a reduction in the number of pupils attending that school. So that's been taken into account. I think I'll also quote, this is what I quoted before to Councillor McComb was a response from Local Development Plans team to Lochmaben Community Council, and I'll just read out another section again which hopefully will help with your deliberation on this. And it states Education Services' position really in respect of how they respond to these applications. So they've said, even if a school roll is projected to be at or above the trigger point, it is still Education Services' understanding and decision of whether any anticipated development and school roll will result in the requirement for refurbishment, extensions or new build, as in many cases it is considered that the current building will suffice. In taking account of the schools in this particular catchment area, it says it's considered that Lochmaben Nursery and Primary will not require refurbishment, extension or new build, and as a result do not appear on the likelihood table, which is what sets out which schools are at or need a contribution. It says similarly with Lockerbie Academy, Education Services deems no secondary schools within the region require developer contributions, as anticipated pupils can be accommodated within the current building or through modifications subject to funds already in place to do so. So that's the reasons how Education Services have come to their consultation response.
Elaine, are you happy with that? Because we could, if members are minded to support this application, agree it's subject to verification that developer contribution is not required, because we have now in the LDP a clear guidance and we couldn't have possibly breached that. That would cause us a problem, but we could ask for verification before such approval was granted. David?
Chair, with respect, what Andrew just read out was the verification that they don't require contribution, and a fairly detailed explanation why. Beyond that, other than circulating that email to members, I don't think there's anything else which we can give you further information on that, because that, ultimately it does come down to education services to make these assessments, and that's the best information that we've got. It's very recent information. I don't know, is that on the website as part of the...
I don't think it is, but it will be made public. It's part of the process in the applications. It will be made public, and as I say, it could be circulated around members. It was a response to the Community Council on that issue, so it can go on publicly on the case file and circulated if need be.
Okay, given that, Andy.
Thanks very much. One of the speakers actually mentioned the hospital and the formal notification being sent directly to the hospital. Andrew, can you enlighten us the response from them? Was there any response from the NHS? Because that is the NHS. Have they responded in any way, either positively or negatively?
Andrew?
No, as part of our neighbour notification procedures, it will be sent to a property within 20 metres, and that's why it's been sent to the hospital. So we haven't had any formal representation from the NHS or Health Board.
And you would expect that letter would be escalated up by managers when they received it?
That's what I was trying to get to the bottom of, Jim, absolutely. But it's obviously with Andrew's gift to tell me that, so I think we can only... I think we should we assume... I would say yes, because the manager of the hospital will send it on up through the pipe, I would have suggested, but can't be sure. That's the only problem.
Thanks, Andy. David, what do you want to add?
Yes, pretty much just say that the legislative requirement is that we have to send out one letter to owner, occupier, lessee, and it is therefore the onus of the recipient to make sure they escalate that to the appropriate parties. So only one letter would have gone to Lochmaben Hospital, and therefore the managers within there would have been required to make other parties aware within the NHS.
Okay, Councillor McKee.
Chair, it's quite concerning, I think, this on page 19. The land allocated to build 5 homes at the entrance to Woodlands requires over 200 trees to be felled. Is that reasonable? We try and build the housing estates and you have your trees and hedges and all that sort of thing. To remove 200 trees seems a bit over the top, does it not?
I think the report will tell you some of them past their best, some are wind blown, and it is the developer's request that we accede to that request, and it's up to you whether or no you accept that position or no. I mean, Leader has already raised the fact that we signed up to a position just a week or two ago on climate change and trying to save the environment. So that point's already been made and well made. So, but we have a decision to make based on the information we have before us. Andy?
I'm trying to go see where I look at the conditions we're putting onto this. Is there a condition in here that there'll be some replanting
Yes.
Absolutely, but it should be indigenous Scottish, not imported spruce. Would be my suggestion, but I think that's covered in the report, isn't it?
Yeah, there's some in the report. I don't know if it covers natural wood, but Andrew?
Condition 7 sets out the requirements for further landscape proposals and also about replacement trees, and it's effectively ensuring that more replacement tree planting is proposed than what has been submitted. I mean, if there's any particular species that members feel that should be in the condition, that's up to members if they want to add that to the condition, that's up to you.
If we are minded to agree, that would be open to members to suggest or to add whatever species they wish. So I suppose the first question is, are we minded to approve this application? It would appear we are unanimous. Are there any additional comments other than the conditions that are set out? Andy?
Yes, any replacement trees are indigenous Scottish would bring back the original character of Lochmaben.
I'm sure members are happy with that. Are there any other questions on the conditions that would be imposed? Okay, it would appear we are unanimous that we will agree this application subject to conditions and to the addition on one condition that the trees planted are indigenous to this country or this region. Okay, can you just confirm the decision, members? Tracy, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, application has been approved subject to conditions as detailed in the report, with the amendment to condition 7 on the replanting species of the trees.
Thank you, Tracy. Okay, members, we come to agenda item number 5. The application with information of new vehicular access and overflow car parking area, erection of lighting columns and new entrance feature at variance with conditions 6 and 8 of planning permission 16/P/40161 to extend operating period of external lighting and North Car Park at Gretna Gateway Outlet Village, North Car Park, Glasgow Road, Gretna. The application type is full application. Reference number is reference 19/0746-full. The recommendation is to approve subject to conditions, and the case officer is Lindsay Cameron. Lindsay, would you just take us through your presentation, please?
Thank you, Chair. As advised by the Chair, this application relates to the North Car Park serving Gretna Gateway Outlet Village, and this slide shows the location of the car park, its relation to the Outlet Village itself, as well as surrounding residential properties. And this slide also shows the main car park and the South Car Park, which serve the Outlet Village. The series of photographs shows the car park and its typical level and pattern of use, as well as its relationship to surrounding properties. This first photograph was taken from the pedestrian access on Glasgow Road, looking in a northwesterly direction. Moving across to a point near the western boundary of the site, this photo looks back across the car park towards Glasgow Road. The next 3 photographs show the boundaries of the car park site with the adjacent residential areas. This first photograph shows the boundary with Croft Road. This is the boundary with Canberra Road, and finally this is the north boundary with Rosebank Court. This final slide is an aerial photograph of the car park, which shows its relationship to the surrounding properties and the typical pattern of usage in the southeast corner of the site, closest to the pedestrian access and the outlet village itself. This application was considered to be compliant with the provisions of the development plan, and it's therefore recommended for approval subject to the conditions set out in the report.
Thank you, Lindsay. Questions for case officer? In that case, members, we are in session. Happy to agree the recommendation. John?
It's just an observation here. The reason this is before us today is because Gretna and Rigg Community Council, as statutory consultees, put in an objection, yet there's nobody here today to tell us what their objection was. It says if they hadn't put their objection in, this wouldn't have been here today.
It should be set out in the report what their objection is. No. So, are we minded to agree? Jock McKay?
It's just regarding the lighting. Given the type of lighting we're using on street lighting now, it's very concentrated on that area. Is that the type of lighting you're suggesting for in that car park?
It says in the report it'll be hooded and it will not reflect the other property. But anyway, Lindsay?
Yes, the lighting which is installed within the car park is in accordance with the council's good lighting practice. The light spillage diagram which was submitted in respect of the original application indicates that there's virtually no light spillage out with the site boundary.
Okay. So, unanimous decision? Tracy, decision please.
Application has been approved subject to conditions as detailed in the report.
Thank you, Tracy. Come to agenda item number 6. An application for an extension to existing log storage yard, including formation of hard standing for use as a log storage, formation of detention basin, internal road link extension, landscaping and associated works at land to north of Stevens Croft Sawmill, NETHERCLEUGH, Lockerbie. Application type is a full application. Reference number is 19/0526/full. Recommendations to approve subject to conditions. Case officer Andrew Robinson, and Andrew has an update for us on the objection. Andrew?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, as you'll note in the report, there was an objection at the time from Network Rail. We received confirmation from them on Monday this week that they have removed their objection. They've come to an arrangement with the applicant on access to railway infrastructure, so that objection has now been removed. The only thing that they've asked for is a directive on any planning permission regarding stability of the railway, which would be a matter between them and the developer. So yes, this application is just to the north of the existing James Jones site at Stevens Croft, as illustrated in red. And what this proposal entails is that's the existing site, which is a combination of a former engineering plant and grassed field, basically, where the land levels slope. This is the west, and this is the east, where the railway line is. And the land levels slope, as you'll see in photographs soon, slopes up from west, where the A74 motorway is, up to the railway line. Effectively, what the proposal is it's engineering operations to form a level yard for storage of timber, basically, which would be in this area here. And as part of the proposal, is access road around the yard area and such and drainage provision within the development. And this is the proposed landscaping. So it actually shows a combination of retention of existing landscape and proposed, of which one is the formation of a new landscape bund along the western boundary. And that is shown in these proposed site sections, which the top two are west to east. So you can see this is the motorway and the B road adjoining it. There's tree screening along the western boundary. So there's a proposed bund here and then a level site, and you can see the extent of land regrading or removal of earth that would be required. So that's the west to east, two sections there. And then this is looking north to south through the site. So you can see here, this is the existing Stevens Croft site, and this is the site here. So these are the photographs. This is actually looking south towards the site. This is from a bridge over the motorway. So you can see the site there. And that's the western boundary. So quite a heavy tree planting along there at present. And this is the site from the north. This is looking towards where the former engineering plant is. And that's looking west, so you can see the extent of the land raise. And that's looking down to the railway line. Effectively, the proposal would be level at that. So at the minute, the site is quite a way above that, but that's the extent of earth to be removed. Okay, this is from what is a private road that connects onto the B7076, and that's the western boundary of the site. And that's looking into the site. So. And you can see the extent of land level raise looking across the site there, where you'd have the earth bund formed roughly in this location, and then the site where the hard standing would be beyond the bund. This is the former engineering site, and that's the existing access road that used to serve that, and it just terminates at the railway line at present. And the railway infrastructure that was subject to the previous objection is actually situated on this side here. But as you'll note in the report, there would still remain access to that. And I'm assuming now that Network Rail have come to an agreement with James Jones to maintain that access. So in conclusion, the officers consider that this application is acceptable, subject to the conditions.
Thanks, Andrew. Questions of the case officer? None. Happy to go with the recommendation. Thanks, members. Tracy, just confirm the decision, please.
Thanks, Chair. Members have agreed to approve the application subject to conditions.
Thanks, Tracy. Company agenda item number 7. Formation of pump track and erection of shelter at Glentrooll Park, Glentrooll Road, Lochside, Dumfries. The application type is a full application. Reference number is 19/0713/full. Recommendations to approve unconditionally, and case officer should have been Claire Eckstein. She's fallen asleep sitting through there waiting for us.
If not. Yeah, sorry, you've just got
David will do it.
You've got the B team, I'm afraid, sorry. Basically, it's a site up at Lochside, where it's an area of... sorry?
Should I?
Yeah, so basically it's an open grassed area up at Lochside, and I'm showing my ignorance here. I had no idea what a pump track was when I first read the description, wondered if it was something to do with drainage, but no, it's not. It's for BMX kids and also used for skateboards and scooters and things like that as well. So it's part and parcel of an overall development of redevelopment of the park, but this is the one part which does actually require planning permission. So you've got we'll let Claire take over from you.
You had fallen asleep, Claire.
You might want to start at the very beginning. You'll be no
Put your
more about
microphone in, Claire, please. Mike, Claire, please.
There we go. Right. So I don't know where David's got up to, but this is obviously the layout of the pump track, which is divided into two sections. There's a smaller section and a larger section. And it's made of asphalt topping, which is approximately 2 meters wide. So I don't know if David explained to you what a pump track is, but it's basically... You didn't? But you explained now, yes? Yep. So this is the open-sided timber shelter, which is 4.7 meters wide and 3.25 meters high. And this is just a plan showing the other associated park upgrades for Glentrooll Park itself, which the only element is actually the pump track, which requires planning permission. All these fall within permitted development rates for the council. So this is photographs of the site. This is showing the site itself was in the centre of the photograph, just to the right of the existing footpath. And so this is looking west along Glentrooll Road, with the application site to the centre right of the photograph, just where and then this is panning right from the previous photograph. So essentially it's behind the tree. And then this is looking towards Glentrooll Road. On the other side, towards the existing play area, and the pump track and shelter would actually be to the left of the footpath in the foreground. And then this is panning left from the previous photograph. You can see Glentrooll Park, fairly sort of flat park. And then panning left again, looking towards Dunlop Road and the flats there. And again, up towards Latimer Court. And then this is looking to the right of the footpath along the boundary with the wetland area. So essentially, the proposal is part of the wider redevelopment of Glentrooll Park.
and no objections have been raised from either the council roads officer or the flood risk management team. The proposal is considered to accord with policy CF3 open space, as it will enhance an existing facility, and given its existing use is not considered to give rise to any adverse conflicts, and so meets with policy OP1. So the proposal has been recommended for approval.
Thanks, Claire. Questions for the case officer? None? Andy? Just happy to go with the recommendation as unanimous decision. Andy?
Actually, thanks. Have you noticed in every single slide there's not about a letter?
Oh, you're lucky.
And I'm saying because there's a different feel in the community there now than there was not that long ago, right? No. Jim McKinney, if he's saying it, they're floors, son.
So, Tracy, can you confirm the decision? Oh, David McKee.
Could I just comment on it, just following on from what Andy said? Up till about a couple of years ago, Lochside was a difficult area to get anything done, to get groups to come together and work. But in the last 2 years or so, they've come together and they're doing a tremendous amount of work. And I think I would just like to ensure that it's recognised and given the planning permission for this. There's already a wall was built, a dry stone wall was built up in the corner there. And these sorts of things are making a big difference to the area. And the people that's for the committees are doing a tremendous job. Thanks very much.
Thanks for that. So, Tracy, can you just confirm the decision of the committee, please?
Yes, members have agreed to approve the application unconditionally.
Thank you, and thank you for your attendance today, members. I have no other business. Thanks very much.